For those that don't know, my name is Jeff Hutchison. I am the Director for Advocacy and Public Policy at TESOL International Association. I've got the privilege of heading up and working for just a wonderful association, global association of devoted educators serving the English language teaching field across a multitude of contexts, not just here in the United States, but across the globe. I will absolutely tell anybody that I got the best job in the world, being able to interact with everyone, except when I have to go up the hill and make a case. It's always not the best job in the world when you're arguing with not arguing, but when you're meeting resistance. Perhaps that's a nicer way to say that. But for the next for the next hour, we would like to talk about what's going on here in the United States at the federal level. We'll talk a little bit about the state level as well, what these actions mean, what is happening currently, and how we're responding to that. Now, I would do a couple of caveats before we get into it. You'll see the little sub thing. It says TESOL International Association update, and I've specifically said 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The reason I have said that is because for all I know, while we're having this, there could be another executive order that comes out and that changes everything for us. So I want to just make sure that it is time bound in the sense that here we are at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, February 7th. We may come out of this and there may be something different. And that really, I think, is representative of what we're witnessing and so much happening all at once around us. The other caveat I have is that as the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, I too am an educator that has not just fallen into, but fallen in love with the policy side of what we do. I have an MA in TESOL. I have a background in higher ed, international education, and I am not an attorney. And I didn't even sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, but I'm still not an attorney in that regard. So what we're providing today is not to be considered or taken as legal advice, but this is just an overview of the actions that are happening and the potential, some of them real and some of them potential impacts upon the field and upon the learners that we serve at all levels. So with that, let me go on to next. Just a quick overview of what we'll be doing. I want to give the main thing that we want to focus on today was that third part on the questions, and then spend a little bit of time on the action that you can take. But the first two will just set the tone of what we're looking at, give you an overview of how we got here, and what's going on, as well as the impact as we see it right now in the different areas of English language teaching and serving multilingual learners of English. And throughout the course of this conversation, I will hopefully slip in and using the acronyms of ELT for English language teaching, the profession, the field. And when talking about learners, I will do my best to reference as multilingual learners of English, or I might even reference as MLEs. And for those of you that are very aware in law in the United States, English learners is what is codified. So sometimes you'll see when we actually are taking cases to the Hill, we will use the phrase English learners because that is what is codified in the law, and it's going to be a frame of reference that the legislator will have. So with that, we'll just jump right in. And if there is, just a quick point of order, Gwen, if there's anything that comes up in the chat that I need to address immediately, please feel free to let me know there. So we go through. So what we know so far. Now, I put up there 2024 was a hangover. I could have put 2023/2024 as a hangover because we faced a lot of challenges over the past couple of years, especially when it came to the support of English MLEs, English learners at the federal level. And that was most pronounced in the appropriations process, the federal funding of education at all levels. You may recall that both in 2023 and 2024, there were segments in the House of Representatives, that wanted to completely eliminate all funding for English language acquisition, which was part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Title III. We were fighting some uphill battles with that. Already, we were looking at a Congress that was under restrictions with the debt ceiling and spending limits. And it was a case where, if we get level funding, it would be a success. We were fortunately at the end of that process, we did get slight increases. I mean, very slight, but increases nonetheless. But we were facing those challenges, and it really set the tone that there was an underlying sentiment to not just defund, but as we'll touch upon a little bit as we're going forward into 2025, carrying out what some of the election campaign was about, was getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education. A lot of that call came, put it back to the states. There's a lot going on with the NAEP and the results there. A lot of activity in terms of the resources and the outcomes at the federal level. So we were faced with those challenges. How are we going to make sure that the funding continue to support Title III funds? A lot of Title III state directors are very, they're looking at, we want to keep funded in that part. So we were working with a hangover in that sense. And then we come into 2025, and I think pretty much we know what the challenges were going to be, because those were clearly articulated in the throughout the election. One of those being cuts to spending, the narrative around what's it called, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, DOGE, I believe, and what has transpired in those activities. The president himself is calling for $1 trillion in cuts in spending. The also the calling for the eradication of anything that has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, not just in the government, but wanting to root it out of the educational system as well, and ultimately to get rid of the Department of Education. And so that's what we're looking at. And when it hit the ground, it hit the ground running. It all came together. So it wasn't a case where we knew what was coming and we had a license order to it. We could deal with it. It was coming out left and right and fast, and which we from Trump's first presidency, first administration, that pretty much is par for the course. You see that going out and what is happening, these things that come out on tariffs and taxation, the recent one under Gaza, and those proposals coming out of left field. And it puts a lot of people, not just in the education field, but all fields, they're trying to react. And then we want to look at this. How can we be proactive? In this chaos, well, seemingly, I'm going to put the adverb seemingly chaotic time that we're looking at. So how can we be proactive? We'll talk about that as we get into the actions. But in 2025, executive orders that came out, then we have memos that came out. You may recall from last week, the Office of Management and Budget from the President's office was going to freeze all grants. That was both blocked by a judicial court and then rescinded just a couple of days later. That doesn't mean the activity is not continuing. The activity of review continues within the Department of Ed. It's going on actively in the Department of State and across other departments about what they're funding and if it is counter to the direction that the administration is going, and that is specifically around areas of efficiency, areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So a lot of that it continues to happen behind the scenes. The appropriations itself, we still do not have a budget for fiscal year 25, and we are 6 months into that fiscal year. We're under, well, almost 6 months. We are under a continuing resolution that will go through March 15th. By March 15th, either a appropriation has been passed, or there could be another continuing resolution keeping the funding going from a prior year. Or there could be another shutdown of the government. That is not something that anyone really wants. It's a political dynamite when that happens. Trump experienced that in his first term, and he was blamed. His constituency blamed him for that. And so that's something he politically wants to avoid as well. But we'll see. We'll see what actually transpires in that process. But right now, the focus at the federal level And the congressional part is looking about the budget, if there's going to be a reconciliation package, putting the budget together, extending taxation or taxing tax credits that Trump would like. So you've got the House and the Senate would like to give Trump a win, but even the Senate and the House are not in agreement on how that's going to happen. So really, there's a lot of things that are still up in the air, still challenging to keep track of on how it's going to play out. Um, and we want to make sure that that continues. Now, the when I say that continues, what I mean is the advocacy around that we're bringing voice and making sure that our positions are being put out there in a positive way to show how important it is and what we're doing, how we're serving, and the impact socially, economically, culturally of what we do has upon not just at their local level, but across the U.S. The other two there, I won't go too much into funding because I think a lot of that has to do with the appropriations process as well as the executive orders. Don't go, we'll maybe touch upon those more in just a moment. But the other one that is kind of in the background is authorization. I mentioned a moment ago the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was from 1965. And it's been reauthorized a few times. The current iteration of that is the Every Student Succeeds Act. But that act, as well as the Higher Education Act and the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, which in Title II of which is the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, all of those are expired. They're expired. Congress has not taken those up to reauthorize them. We almost had WIOA reauthorized in the 118th Congress, but that didn't happen. You say, well, why is that important? Well, it's important. You say, why it's important because you say, well, that shouldn't matter. Congress continues to fund these programs. Well, yes, but there's a growing contingent in Congress that is taking the attitude that, well, if we haven't authorized something, why should we fund it? Of course, my retort to that is, well, if you hadn't got off your and authorized it, we wouldn't be in this place to begin with. Oh yeah, we're recording, so I'm glad I bleeped that out. But anyway, that's my rejoinder to that. But it is something to be of concern, and so we do at TESOL in our advocacy work. And we come alongside other associations as when is there going to be opportunity to reauthorize these? We fought hard in the 118th for WIOA, and we continue to look for champions for those that would bring forth the Elementary Secondary Education Act as well as the Higher Education Act. So these things are all important. That's kind of what we know, and it's a context of what we're dealing with right now as we are just we're not even a month into the Trump administration, and this is what we're working with right now. And what is the impact? Well, the impact, when you look at the executive actions that have come up, and I say not just the orders, but the actions as well, because you have orders that come on, about eradicating diversity, equity, inclusion throughout the government offices. You have reductions in workforce that are in process. Everyone has seen the whole debacle going on with the complete, I don't know if it's a complete shutdown, but USAID being throttled right now and the implications for that. So you've got those from the orders, but also you have actions. And one of the actions that has really, really been impactful is the rescission of the sensitive and protected areas policy. And it is a policy. I want to clarify a few things. Some people think, this is a law. Yeah, you can't do it. It is a policy. I think it was first put out around 1993, but it is reiterated across different administrations, and sometimes it is rescinded. And I do like to tell people nothing is new under the sun. Back during Obama's administration, we were working with rescission of that policy. I personally had to work with schools and developing plans when immigration ICE comes for apprehensions and arrests at schools. So it's not new, but it is very challenging, especially in a context that's overlaid in which the focus of the administration is on the removal of the undocumented, unlawfully present right now. And so that causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of concern in that process. So that is a huge area of impact. It's not just at the K-12, K through 12 level. It's any school. It's any school. There's a lot of other areas, sensitive hospitals, I think funerals fall under it. Churches or any religious gathering where that takes place. But it, could be a vocational school, could be any place where it is designed and assigned for learning. So it does not have to be a public K through 12. It's higher ed. It's your community colleges. It's your for-profit educational institutions. It's all of them that are open to this. So it's very impactful, and that has left a lot of educators, a lot of administrators scrambling about what to do when or if, as the case may be, immigration, customs enforcement, or there are other agencies that are so assigned for this process come a calling. And what does it mean for the protections of your institution, for the protections of the students, protection of the families, making sure that the rights are seen to in that process. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to some of the questions, but that really is one of the huge areas that is of main concern right now. And I think everybody, I doubt there's anyone on the call right now that would, regardless of your political affiliation, as educators, we fully are invested in education, access for education for all of our students. We care, we have empathy, and this is important. How do we make sure that we're protecting the rights in the midst of this? So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Funding, a couple of things on funding. A lot of it right now, again, is unknown. I think things that are most impactful, if you have programs around Department of State funding and grants through the Department of State, those some of those have had work stop orders in place. Right now, the exchanges, which are out of the Department of State, those seem to be left intact. That does not mean that they won't be impacted. But as far as we know, the community of practices are still accessible. The English language fellows program is still accessible. I do know on the adult ed side, there are, while there's not concerns on the funding, there's concern from the impact of people not coming because they're afraid of the sensitive areas. So it does kind of has an overlap there. In that sense. But the big area, of course, is Title III. Last week, when that memo came out, everybody freaked. And I think that was really the intent, knowing how this administration acts, is to, get that shock factor out there about what the impact of Title III is. Well, we do know that we are under continuing resolution. Title III funds continue. That's under a statutory aspect. So they do continue. Anything that the states have obligated through the Title III at the end of the 2024 fiscal year, so September 30th of last year, those remain in effect, and they will go through this fiscal year. But the discretionary, so for example, the national program development, those are discretionary, not statutory in that sense. Those could be well, they probably are under review, some of them in that aspect, but doesn't mean that they're going to be taken away. They could be, but there would have to be some cause in that. Cause could be based upon performance. Cause could be alignment with the administration's initiatives. So that's all to say that right now things continue. Tomorrow, you may be impacted, but especially any obligated funds for Title III, they're still in place. The appropriations process is going to factor a lot for fiscal year 2025, especially if one of the ways that they seek to get rid of the Department of Education is to defund it. I think we're talking about a $90 billion, I believe, for overall for the Department of Education. I know that rumor has it, I shouldn't say I know, it's rumor, that the Senate during the budget is trying to look at $1 billion in cuts to education. Now that's top line. What that looks like, in the different areas. There's a vast array of what the Department of Education covers. So where it's going to look, where it's going to fall, we shall see. Remains to be seen. So those are still in play right now. I know that some organizations are involved in trying to collect some information. Anecdotal. I know the National Council for Literacy is collecting on adult ed programs impacted. So as we know, we'll make sure that is communicated out and made available. And if you happen to know, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you if there's any advocacy area that we can help and focus on. please communicate with us in that. I have said this so many times before. TESOL International Association is an English language mission teaching mission focused association. We are not an advocacy association, even though advocacy is part of our values. And what I mean is we're going to put more in professional development, education, networking, research, things of that nature, such that I don't, unlike some associations who have lawyers and teams on policy and we don't have that. We rely on you. We look at advocacy as grassroots. We need your voices out there, your voices in the field to raise these issues, and advocate and move these things forward. So that's why I say please let us know. We may hear about things from our peer associations, from our contacts at federal agencies, from the officials that we're in contact with. But our biggest resource is you. So please keep in communication with that. And then lastly, the access to education. This is the one that really I am most concerned about because I think it has long-term implications. And this is a challenges we know that we're going to be rising, and they are starting to percolate to Plyler v. Doe. For those who are not familiar, Plyler v. Doe is a Supreme Court decision from 1982 that ensconced into law, made it the rule of law in the United States, that every child would have access to education regardless of their immigration status. And that has been the rule of law since 1982. Well, because that came through through the Supreme Court, it can be challenged. That's the way the Supreme Court works. There's challenges all the time, and we go back and forth on that. It's not codified into law. That is the legislature's responsibility. I wish they would do that. Maybe someday they will. Who knows? But what we're seeing right now, if you're looking at, especially in Oklahoma and Indiana, there was a bill I saw in New Hampshire. There's a bill in Texas in which the state is starting to set the stage that would eventually challenge Plyler v. Doe, and that could percolate up. So we want to make, they're putting, what I mean by that, they would be putting barriers to, or presumably putting barriers to access, to educational access based upon immigration status. The one in Texas, for example, is calling for the federal government to pay for the education of all undocumented students. Well, that means they would have to know who's undocumented. And schools cannot require proof of status as required for enrollment. And so they would be setting the stage for that and set the stage for challenges. So that's one of the areas we're looking at and following very closely. We're working with our affiliates in those areas to see, what advocacy grassroots can we come alongside and support there. So I think that's one I think that has long-term implications. I will go back to that top one, sensitive and protected areas, just to let you know that we are following a bill right now that hopefully will be reintroduced. It's been introduced in prior Congresses. That would it's a bill to enshrine in law, not a policy, but enshrine in law, the sensitive and protected areas. Once that comes up, you'll be seeing our call out for that. We're going to be having a heavy push, hopefully, to focus on especially members of Congress that are more moderate leaning on the R side, that would come alongside and have bipartisan support on that. So you'll see more from that. Hopefully, once that's introduced, we'll have that out and ready. TESOL has already endorsed it. And we're over 300 organizations have endorsed that piece. It's just not out yet for us to begin getting our voice out. So hopefully it'll be out by the time of the virtual advocacy days by the end of the month, and we'll be pushing that as well. So with that, I want to go get to some of the pre-submitted questions, and what I would like to, or how I would like to address them. I will try to go through them as specifically as possible, but we found that the questions that came through really came into four categories: the students and families, the profession itself, and then global impacts that we were looking at, and then some of the other, which kind of go a little bit out outside of the ELT, but are not, but are impactful nonetheless, in that sense. So I'll go through some of these. The first question, um, that came up, and really it's not one that is so much of a specific answer we can provide, but I think it expresses a sentiment of where we are. How do we help kids? Now, I'll just say not just kids, but how do we help any learner, all of our learners, feel safe at school? So when we're under a rescission of the sensitive and protected areas policy, and we know that ICE can come a calling, how do we help people? How do we help learners? How do we help their families feel safe? And I always fall back to making sure that you have information that is known and communicated. Most schools, well, I say most. I have not done a survey to qualify and justify the use of most there, but I will say many schools, school districts have policies in place, whether it's K through 12, whether it's higher ed. If you're in a community-based program, non-traditional program, make sure that you have these in place so that it's communicated out to you. If you're a teacher in the classroom, you need to know what to do. What if you happen to be at the front and ICE comes up? Do you just open the door and say, "Here, come"? I hope that is not your district plan. But having that plan in place and something that is communicated not just internally but externally, your families need to know what could happen. And just a word with that, any plan hopefully will have as part of that process that when Immigration and Customs Enforcement comes, that they cannot have access to any minor without parental consent unless there is a judicial warrant involved. A judicial warrant is vital in this case. They can't just have an administrative warrant. It has to be a judicial warrant signed off by a judge, judicial. That's hence the name. A lot of schools have that in their protocols. One of the resources I will be sharing a little bit later. Well, matter of fact, let me just put a link in it real quick. Where is it? I'll put a link in here real quick. The resource page that we have has links to several examples of schools that have put these out. Yeah, and I froze kind of funny. So let me get back over there. Yeah, there we go. I shouldn't pucker up and freeze. That looked funny there. Now where'd my chat go? Okay, here's my chat.
This is Gwen. I can help you if you want me to just post links and things.
Oh, okay. Well, I just posted this link in there, so everyone has that link. I can just make sure I have that in there. But we have in there one of the first things. If you go down, well, I just see in the chat someone said we were told that because our protected status has been revoked, ICE can have access to minors. They can have access, but they have to make sure that the rights are protected. There is parental consent involved and judicial warrants. It is my hope that, and I believe the person that put that in chat, Winona, it is my hope that your district does not say, "Oh, we just open the doors and let anybody come in and do anything." We in the United States built on the Fourth Amendment rights, due process. So please make sure that if they have that attitude, this is where you want to come together, build some coalition, get that information in place. That we have that resource page that has examples across the United States, and I always give credit where credit is due. That one of those resources we have highlighted came from a member of NAELPA, National Association of English Language Program Administrators, in Wayne County, Michigan. Great resource that they put together there. And then another one which has access to those from the Great City Schools. So that organization, Great City Schools, provided that. So some great examples you can look through, get better information. You don't have to reinvent the wheel in this process, is all I'm saying. And there are in place. Now we know is access the same as taking custody of someone? Well, taking custody of someone is after the access to them, and then what they do with them. That's always always, and I see the chat going crazy there. But access, for what purposes? Making sure that at least the rights are protected in that place. I would advocate if you don't have a policy in place, that you would advocate locally for that, bring your parents together, bring like organizations together that are helping. One just put in Fuji's family has a playbook. We have actually, if you go to that resource page we got a link to that page. We have a link to the AFT page, American Federations of Teachers page, which even includes cards that you can hand out to parents and families about knowing your rights. So all of these are great resources. Make sure that you go through them. And I love the fact that you're sharing in the chat some more of these. We do have I believe we have that one in there as well, or at least the aasa.org link as well. If there's anything that we're missing, please feel free to let us know, send that out to us. And that would be most appreciative in that process. So let me make sure I'm not frozen again. I'll look over there. Um, Going back to the question. So I just started out because it's more of a general question, but it allowed us to get a little bit deeper into that. Again, if I could sum up when it talks about students, families, and communities, they from a logical standpoint, making sure that your institution, your school, and I say making sure, knowing what your school has, what is the policy in place, what's communicated out to families, how can you be an advocate in that process to help make sure that, hey, I would like to add some information. I know this great resource, and it shows what is really required in about a judicial warrant. I see we don't have that in our requirements. Making sure that there's something that's communicated out to families as well, and if possible, please make sure it's in the home language of those. That's what I love about the AFT resource. It has several languages there about knowing your rights, so you can hand out to families small little cards. So it's just some things that you can do there locally. And then, some of the other questions that we received ahead of time started to get a little deeper about, and I think that goes to one of that question, my school is open door, they let them come in. What could I do as an individual? Well, I'm not going to tell someone to go out and do something that's going to wind up getting them fired.
Yeah.
But I think that is something that you would instead want to address by, again, coming alongside your school, coming alongside the organizations that you have in and around your community, and to help educate, help be part of the solution with that, and see if you can build these resources in that will eventually help protect the rights of students in that process. And going on, let me see a couple of others. I thought this was a good one. This was not so much a question, but a comment here that says teachers are encouraged older students to discuss safety plans like housing, food, resources at school and the community. I think this is especially important. A great comment that was made because you may have, and I think we have heard reports of this happening, I think in Chicago, in which the students go home and there's no one there because they have their parents or guardians have been apprehended. So what is that child to do? Where do they go? How do they access resources? And doing that ahead of time, informing families to help them make plans. There is, matter of fact, the AFT resource that I referenced, and we have a link to it in our resource that was in the chat there, is actually said, how do you make an emergency plan? Family emergency plan. What do you do in that? So those are all great resources to help inform your own advocacy and your own efforts in what you are doing there on the ground. Trying to look through if there's any other. I want to be mindful. Yeah, okay. Let's see some of the other questions. Well, I think we've already addressed it. What if our district is not protecting students by allowing ICE to enter the building without a warrant and taking them directly to students? I think it was kind of addressed that. But I would also encourage not just the community and building the coalitions and organizations, but reaching out, getting some legal advice and guidance on this. There is. I'll go ahead and put this in because I think it fits here. It's more for helping the families and have access to it, but I think it is a good source here. We'll get my chat up, and this is a link, a legal directory for immigration advocates. I think that is a great one. It goes by state. It's a great resource that we got. Our affiliate over in Indiana sent that, and so I'm passing that along. Great resource there to have. And I'm still frozen. Man, I looked like I. Oh, that was a bad look. Okay, there we
Oh,
go. So, so yeah, just passing that along. Also, too.
I know.
Um, Now, I will say this too. If you have been in and around TESOL for any length of time, you're familiar with the name Roger Rosenthal. Roger Rosenthal is talking. He is a great advocate. I've had the just the privilege of connecting him with people in need. I've had calls from Louisiana and Ohio, all across that say, hey, I can, we're having questions here, need help. And I'm not, I shouldn't put Roger's name out there, but I'm always happy to take something to Roger, and he will determine if he has the bandwidth and ability to get in. But he is a great resource. I know he goes out to affiliates, he goes out to other associations. He will be at TESOL in March with us. He's got a couple of great sessions, and then he's also going to be at a newcomer convention in Columbus, Ohio, coming up in June as well. And I'm sure he's got a lot of other things going on his agenda. But that is a resource that we'll be happy to connect you with. And we work with National Immigration Law Center. We work in coalition and partnership with a lot of associations that are advocates in that area. We can help connect you. So what I'm saying, if you can't find it, feel free to contact us. We'll do our best to help connect you with the best resource we can for that. So please do that there. And making sure that you are accessing us, using us for needs. We're happy to help get you connected, whatever the case may be. And then someone also asked, as I tutor newcomer students at a local literacy center, are literacy centers considered educational institutions? I would absolutely say yes to that. Now there may be some legal precedents that say no, but quite frankly, if they're not a no, then they're already open up to that. But in this case, it really doesn't matter now that the policy is rescinded. Uh, ICE can come in for apprehension and arrest. But again, if you are at a literacy center, that you say, well, it's not a traditional educational institution. Same thing applies. Talk to the administrators, talk to the people involved in charge. Make sure that ask them what the plan is. What if immigration shows up? What are we communicating to families? What are we communicating to our students in this case? Because you want to make sure that when you are communicating out, you don't want all of a sudden to have everybody disappear and you don't have anybody in your classroom. You don't want to, you still, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're providing a safe place and that education can take place. So please, ask those questions, ask the hard questions, and serve yourself, put yourself out there as a resource. And you say, well, I'm not a resource. Well, you got so many people around you. TESOL can come around you. Other organizations will come around you and give you those resources and help you in that. So don't feel like you're doing it on your own there. Um, so so and see if there's any other questions here. Personnel officials come to campus. Okay, so I think we've addressed those. I think pretty much I think with enough information that you can begin down a track to help find what you need. But I will say this, that if regardless of a political affiliation, I would hope that we as educators want our schools to make sure that we're in compliance and that the rights of our students, regardless of their status, are protected. Our rights are protected, our families' rights are protected. And when I say make sure that they're protected, I'm not saying that the responsibility is yours, but we want to make sure that we're doing our part in that environment for communication, building that community. Because we do want to come alongside, regardless of their status, and we want that education to take place. There are organizations that can support individuals that if someone is undocumented, unlawfully present, illegally present, whatever phrase that you take, there are resources out there for them to remedy that. And it'd be great if they could go in through that process. I know this is a trying time because it may be opening themselves up to deportation. So a lot of questions that are floating around at that. Going to the next one, ELT profession. What the big question: are we all going to lose our jobs? I would encourage everyone to get into craft distillery. No, I'm joking. Don't you know, um, it may drive us to drink. That's the joke there if you didn't get that. But we're already in a situation that we got teacher shortages around. We have fluctuations. I know higher ed fluctuates up and down on students coming into the United States for study. Recently, the immigration situation is such that between refugees, between undocumented, between people migrating, lawfully through whatever lawful means that may be to the United States, there are a lot of MLEs in our schools, and that you if you were at a school that experienced a 200, 400, 800% increase in English learners and you weren't prepared for that, you were already being being challenged to make sure that you're providing that. And so if we're looking at the possibility of funding losses or students disappearing, that there's a very real fear of that. Well, what can you do? You can always advocate out there. I'm going to say advocate based upon our focus, advocate at the federal level for funding for education, but add to this, advocate at your state and local level. We look at the U.S. government and say, okay, well, the U.S. government needs to fund our education. Or maybe you're of the camp right now, well, I don't know if we need a Department of Education. But the end result is that right at about 90% of all funding for our schools comes from the local and the state level. The federal government only provides about 10% across the board. And even that fluctuates. Some years it's 7%, sometimes it's 12%. But so right on average, about 10% of the funding comes there. So make sure that you're doing your advocacy at the state and local level to have the funds in place for your district's needs, your state's needs to serve your learners. And that, while primarily that I'm talking about K through 12, what's happening at the public institutions at the state level? How much money is coming in at the state level? We find more and more for higher education institutions. That's less and less. What can we do to help advocate is what I'm trying to say there. Someone asked, will our jobs be impacted by our kids' funding? And the reality is, if funding is taken away, or if there are drastic changes in enrollment, then school districts, LEAs, SEAs, local education agencies, state education agencies have to make decisions that could impact. It could impact you. It could impact. It could be that all of a sudden you find more work on your plate. I think that is something that we are accustomed to. Unfortunately, I hate to say that in education, but it seems like that's what we're accustomed to. But will it affect the jobs? It could. So, my response to that is get out there and advocate. And when I say advocate, I'm not just saying going around knocking on doors asking for money. I'm talking about pushing out your value, tooting your own horn, if you will, letting people know about the impact that you're having, the impact that your learners are having. What is the economic impact to the communities about your learners, the families? What are the social and cultural impacts? And what are people doing? Tell those stories. Get them out. Don't hide it. Always look for ways to communicate that out. Work with other organizations. Find the social media channels, the traditional media, whatever it is. Get those stories out and show the value and importance of what you're doing. So, at the end of the day, if let's say tomorrow or maybe by the end of this call that we found out that funding for the Department of Education was cut off, well, there would be legal challenges to that. But let's say at some point in the future, the federal flow of monies stopped specifically, and I'll just bring it down to Title III. What do you do? Well, that is where you're going to have to backfill with the state and local. So what's going to be there? What advocacy efforts, what's in place, what are the champions you put in, what are the coalitions you're building there? That is something you should be working on, and hopefully we'll also be working on but we will be working on the federal level as well, and hopefully that won't be a reality. That would be worst case scenario all over there. Okay, so continuing on, I realize I'm butting up against time here. I want to go back to the global impact. I think this is really one of that really impacts in higher education, international partnerships that are developing, as well as a lot of work through the Department of State. I mentioned before that as of right now, exchange does not seem to be impacted. There may be some anecdotal out there, but there's nothing systemic. But I will say that the departments are doing a review right now. The departments are doing a review, and they're doing a review based upon the administration's directions on diversity, equity, inclusion, and these types of programs are generally the ones that are going to have heightened scrutiny. And it remains to be seen what that impact will be. I know, one of the current, the first bill that Trump signed was to make it easier for states to work with the federal government to um, identify and deport people that were committing crimes. And the framework of the bill was for heinous crimes, but the language of the bill were for little bitty crimes. So even things that might be could be from a cultural misunderstanding could have resulted in a crime. Well, we take that a little further, and if the nation that that individual is coming from does not receive them, it could allow a litigation process that could ultimately impact the visas from that country, which impacts the ability for us to attract people to come and work, people to come and study, people to come in our institutions. So these are very real implications of what's going on. And you say, well, what can we do? Well, you can get involved and advocate for that. That bill that came through, it is yet to be seen what it's going to look like in reality. But what can we do in the meantime to help advocate for things that are coming down the line to show our value and show the worth of the students, of the personnel that come into this. So, I think all of that together, we're looking at impacts on the Department of State. We're looking at, what could we do for comprehensive immigration reform? Last Congress, you may recall that we were asking people to advocate for the Dignity Act. That was a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform bill put out by Salazar out of Florida and Escobar. If I get that right, is it Escobar's out of Texas? Maybe I got that backwards. I can't remember. Bipartisan, lot of support bipartisan, and it addressed a lot of those issues that just came up. So we'll be looking for those things that we can advocate for. Is there a perfect bill out there? There's no perfect bill out there, but that was one of the best ones, and probably the only attempt that was really not the only attempt, but there was one of the best attempts in Congress that addressed that. And very quickly here at the end, just a couple of things that came up. One of them had to do with the temporary protected status that has been removed from the Venezuelans. That is set to expire now in April. And what does that mean for, especially if you have students in temporary protected status? I put that link in there earlier, but I would encourage anyone that has, could be a colleague, could be students that are Venezuelan and they're that are in particular temporary protected status, and that is going to be expiring. They should seek some legal counsel to see if there's other remedy for them in that process. And I know at the higher ed level, if you had a student that was on a non-immigrant visa and they also chose to go under TPS, if they maintained their non-immigrant student visa, then even if they lost the TPS, they would still have their F1 status. So that's something that could only be determined if they continue to maintain that F1 simultaneously, maintaining that. So that was one of the others. I think there was another one that came out about when I love this segue about those people coming to TESOL that say, hey, does TESOL provide any letters of support for visas? We absolutely do. I know right now we're in February, so it's probably a little bit late for the visa process. But we do have a template that we're happy to use and send that out. You can just email me, email advocacy@tesol.org. Happy to help with that. And let's see, the other one I think we already addressed from the global. So what what is next? What can you do? And very briefly, I've said this throughout, be an advocate. And an advocate could be coming to the Hill for us. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you for virtual days, being a voice to the Hill, taking these issues to your congressional representatives, to your senators, letting them know about the importance of what you do, the importance of the people you serve, the importance to your community and the economy. All of these things, we would help guide you on putting that together. The TESOL resources, we have already put that in the chat for you. Make sure that you have that. I need to always be careful. I look like I'm, uh, some other resources that we have. I'll put this in the chat very quickly that we have for you. Just making sure that you access those, help stay informed. And we too, please let us know if there is something missing from the resources we're providing. We want to make sure that we're providing the best. Um, Oh, someone just says at this time there's no definitive move towards eliminating all ELL TESOL programs. Correct. That is correct. I actually just had the opportunity earlier today to talk with OELA, Office of English Language Acquisition. They're the ones that gave me the information about the continuation of obligated funds. The only thing that is happening right now is a continuous review of programs funding that might not be in a line with the Trump administration's directive, specifically on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's what's going on there. And on the USCIS funding, yeah, there's been some changes over there. What's going on? The immigrant integration progress, the EARN program. I think a lot of those have been set aside as part of the stop work there for that. Oh, and someone said you mentioned the TESOL newcomer convention. It's not a TESOL convention. It is actually a newcomer convention. I'm going to be there for it. TESOL is going to be present. It's in Columbus later this year. We do have that up as if you go to our mytesol.org in our events. We have a site to that. And what I will do, I will put a link. I don't have a link to that newcomer event happening in Columbus right in front of me, but I'm making some notes on this that we will make available to everyone afterwards. I'll put that link in there for you. And then, so advocacy resources, stay informed. If you haven't signed up for our advocacy actions, please sign up. We do send out periodic alerts. I promise I'm not going to inundate your inbox with junk. I'm going to only email out, when there's important updates going on or opportunities to take action. And then also advocate locally. We look to the federal level, but you are on the ground locally. And and when I say locally, it's not just your state and local authorities, assembly people, etc. It's also it's also what you're doing within your community, and connecting with the other organizations and associations serving in your community. Be active there in that process, and that goes into the other one, building that community. And then please take action. Don't feel like you're helpless. And I realize I do want to put out that we may have different views on everything going on right now with this administration. Our focus here on TESOL is about our service as a field and the service to our learners. So things that impact, like the sensitive areas policy, our ability to provide that education and provide that space for them. That's what we're going to be advocating about. So be, please take action, and take action in a way that's going to be in line with your values for that. Hopefully your values as an educator are something that are going to be amplifying the messages that we have looked at throughout this session. A few other points as we go through. Here is a link to the Advocacy Action Days. Would love to have you coming up. We're going to be, the virtual one is one you don't have to travel anywhere. It's on the 25th, but pretty much it's anytime that week. If you can have the time, we'll help you get connected to a member of Congress. We'll give you the talking points. We'll tell you how to say, we'll have some training on that. So if and it may be that, I'm out on the West Coast. I can't, well, that's fine. That's actually even better than, you can, during your lunchtime, it's going to be 3 o'clock over here, on the East Coast, and you can get some time with them. But you can also, get connected to your district offices there. And then we do have the in-person one. That's June 16th to the 18th. Would love to see you there. We're going to have policy updates from our colleagues. I see Susan Rutledge clapping. I'll probably have Susan come in and talk about her experience. She's always a big advocate around about that. So I just love to see you there. Love to take part in that. So please come. And then also TESOL 2025. We are convening. One of the sessions is going to be about state level advocacy. We've got a lot of federal advocacy and college session updates that we'll be doing there. So please feel free to come. Please, if you are able, come to TESOL 2025. If for nothing else, the fact you can get away, I'm up in the Northeast, get away from the snow and cold and go out to sunny Southern California. We'd love to see you there. And then just a couple of other things. We don't advocacy, like I said before, that's not our main core. Our main core is about our education, it's about our professional development. But advocacy is really at the core of everything we do. And if you can help come alongside, support us, we really appreciate it. We do have a TESOL annual fund. Every little bit helps. And then lastly, I think really of great importance, if you're not a member of TESOL, please join us. Please come alongside. And even if you're not a member of TESOL, at least join your local affiliate. Be part of, be part of how you move us forward. When I said at the beginning, we rely on you, advocacy relies on you, everything relies on you. Join, be a member, make your voice heard inside the association, be a leader within the association to help us move things forward. And with that, here I am. Whoops, where'd I go? Sorry about that. Let me get this back up. There we go. All right, my apologies there. It disappeared. With that, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to take that, or you can just do advocacy at tsol.com. Hope to see you there. Hope to see you virtually February 25th, and then in person at the convention, and then again in person our advocacy days in June. This all could change next week. If it does change next week, look for it. We'll keep you updated and send you more information out. But keep working, keep serving, keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you to all.